Afternoon and welcome to another edition of Black Press Live. And generally at this time, you see us talking to our iconic publishers. But today, we're going to change it up a little bit. Today, we are going to talk to the younger generation of the Black press. Yes, there is a younger generation. We start with Savannah Wood, the archives director for the Afro. The Afro is in Baltimore and Washington, D.C. We also have Celeste Kearney of the Cincinnati Herald, who is a recent Dartmouth graduate. We have Lafayette Barnes, the editor or the publisher, I'm sorry, of The Bridge, which is in the family of the Washington Informer. And last and certainly not least in my book is Paris Brown. Paris is an intern this summer for us at the NNPA, and we are glad to have her. Paris is, as you can see, she's turning 33. No, she's turning 13. She's 13, turning 14. So welcome, guys. This is the next generation. We appreciate having you guys on. And let's just go right to it. I'm going to start with Savannah Wood because she has a great title within the Afro. Savannah, Archives Director. Tell us a little bit about that, Savannah.
Yeah, the Afro-American newspaper has been publishing for nearly 128 years, and we've been collecting photographs, documents, all kinds of things for that entire time period. So the archives are really rich, and they're a great document of Black life, not only in Baltimore where we were founded, but across the Eastern Seaboard, across the country even, and there are also international artifacts that are part of the archives. So in my role as the archives director, I'm helping to facilitate research for people who are working on their PhDs, who already have them, who are working on books, anybody who reaches out to us with inquiries about our archives. So that's kind of the nutshell of what I'm doing with the Afro. And I'm also the director of Afro Charities, which is our nonprofit arm. And through that, I'm creating programming that is connecting our archives to the contemporary landscape in really interesting ways for people to get involved with.
It sounds very important. That's for sure. Last year, the Black Press, the National Newspaper Publishers Association, held its annual convention in Cincinnati, where the Cincinnati Herald, Jan Michelle Kearney, was the host publisher and did a phenomenal job. Today, we have Celeste Kearney, her daughter, who has worked with the Herald in, I think, a couple of capacities. Celeste, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so I formerly was the assistant editor of the Dayton Defender, which is under the Cincinnati Herald umbrella. I also have done a lot of things with the Cincinnati Herald, from layout to writing stories to, helping with the NNPA convention last year, kind of a bunch of different roles within it. But the Cincinnati Herald is great because of all the great events and opportunities to promote people in the Cincinnati, Northern Kentucky, and Dayton, Ohio area.
Sounds important. And speaking of importance, there's not too many people more important to me than Paris Brown. Paris has written a couple of columns already. One, she wrote about her parents, myself and my wife, when we were recovering from COVID-19, and a number of newspapers, including, I believe, the Afro, picked it up. Mm-hmm. Paris is now writing a baking column for teens in the Black Press. Paris, tell us what's your latest creation?
Well, I just finished writing about my cheesecake cookie recipe that I created not too long ago, and I described how that came about and the recipe.
Yeah, sounds good. Did it take long to make?
No, not at all. It takes about 15 minutes to make them.
Wow.
Okay. Sounds like a plan. We're going to talk more about that in a little bit. And we also have Lafayette Barnes, and you know what? Lafayette Barnes, the fourth. I guess we got to get that right? Mm-hmm. Lafayette, the publisher of The Bridge. Lafayette, you guys have been doing a tremendous job, and we often talk about how it's important to make sure that we have publications, and we have our journalism reflects that of young ones, and The Bridge does just that. Tell us more about The Bridge, Lafayette.
Yeah, so the Bridge is basically a new effort of the Washington Informer to reach a millennial audience, traditionally, our audience at the Informer is about the same age as the newspaper, which, is, I think about it, in its 56th year. So, in order to continue the legacy of the Washington Informer, we decided to, start a smaller brand called The Bridge, which would serve to link those two age groups.
Yes. So, and I'm going to stay with you for a moment, Lafayette. What are you guys working on right now as we speak?
So right now, we just wrapped up so we're a monthly publication. We print monthly as an insert inside of the Washington Informer newspaper. So if you have a subscription to the Informer, you can get The Bridge automatically. And then we have partners locally that distribute our paper. So, certain hotels or sneaker stores or whatever, places where young people frequent. And so every month we have a different theme. And this month our theme is Black Music Month. So we're talking about, what's going on politically in DC as far as what we have, an event we have called Mochella, which is basically, they call it the Million Mo March. It's like where all the younger Black folks in DC come together, celebrate, with go-go music and protest, their grievances, whatever that may be. So last year it started. This year is the second annual Mochella. I think they had maybe like 4,000 or 5,000 people attend this year. More people last year. It actually made it to the BET Music Awards. They had "Don't Mute DC." I know you may have seen that hashtag. Mm-hmm. So it's a major movement going on in DC right now. And there's a lot of other things happening. COVID-19. We're right in the middle of that. Artists are still trying to figure out how they're going to make money, where they're going to perform. Venue owners are trying to figure out, what they're going to do in the coming months, how they're going to survive this phased reopening. So we're going to discuss a bunch of different topics related to, the music and entertainment industry in DC. The paper will be out in print tomorrow, and everything will be up online on Friday, as well as social. So, you can take, some time to read through that, and we'll have more surprises coming throughout the month that you'll see via our social media, which you can follow at WIBridgeDC.
And Lafayette, one last thing, Chevy Lassiter writes in that we are all young in the head at the Washington Informer.
Yeah, very true. Very true. Chevy is certainly one of the young spirits at the Informer that we appreciate.
Young spirits. I think we'll roll with that, Lafayette. Celeste Kearney out in Cincinnati. Celeste, so you as we said, you've been in a couple of capacities with the Herald. As a young person working with the Black press, now I know it's a little different for you in that you have your mom as a publisher, like Lafayette's mom is a publisher. But what do you gain from working working for the Black press? Let me put it that way.
I think for me, it was really the connection to the community. So I think it's hard, especially when you're young, to try to find that connection to the Black community outside of, kind of your friends from school or other extracurriculars. So being involved in Cincinnati as a whole and staying up to date on what's going on and how we can make a change. Because I think a lot of what's going on in the Black community, especially now, you have to learn from the past. And so being able to form those connections through the Black press in Cincinnati and the Cincinnati area to help us figure out what to do next and the best way to use our resources.
Yeah,
and use all the. I feel like especially you said a lot of energy. Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
No, go ahead. You're fine.
Yeah, I was gonna say, especially since a lot of youth have a lot of energy, but we might not know what the next steps are. So being able to talk to the larger Black community in Cincinnati about what's been done before, what's worked in Cincinnati, what hasn't worked, to find out how to create change and stay informed.
Yeah, and Celeste, what's the, if you will, the pulse of the young African-American community in Cincinnati? What is it like to be a young person in Cincinnati today, a young African-American?
Yeah, I think it's, similar to kind of a lot of cities around the country. People are very upset. There's a lot going on. It's, especially hard to see so much violence in the media every day and, think about what that means for our own lives and what to do next and how we can create change. So I definitely see a lot of passion in Cincinnati, especially with Black youth, which is really great, that there's so much energy and desire for change. So I'm looking forward to, seeing some positive things come out of this time.
Yeah, great. And as mentioned, last summer we had our the NNPA's convention there. This is the 80th year of the National Newspaper Publishers Association and the 193rd year of the Black Press of America. And this year, next month, is going to be our first virtual convention, and we encourage everyone to sign up. There's some great stuff happening. The address to sign up, and it's free, totally free, is virtual nnpa2020.com, virtual nnpa2020.com. So please sign up. It's no charge, no downloads or anything like that. Savannah, I want to go back to you and your exciting job, but also the Afro has such, as you alluded to, such a history. So what is it like? You're involved in one of our historic papers of the Black Press. What is that like? And is that any added pressure for you to perform at the highest level?
Oh, always. Yeah. I mean, it's a huge legacy, and it's my family's legacy. So my great-great-grandfather is the founder of the Afro. So for me, it's an amazing opportunity to be able to come back to look through all of the work that my family has done over the past century and some change, to really get the word out about issues related to Black people. And we've always been an activist paper, always been advocating. I mean, that's the reason why the Black Press exists, is to advocate for Black people. And so to be able to see that in the archives throughout the years is really inspiring. But yes, it's also heavy, because it's, you want to see this live for another 128 years. So as media evolves and as advertising evolves and all of that, it's a difficult ballgame for all newspapers, not only Black newspapers. But I think, with what's going on in current events, there's a lens being turned on the Black press in a way that, kind of ebbs and flows. And I hope that this time we're able to sustain that, to sustain the fact that people need to be supporting Black institutions that have been really there for Black people since day one, because it's us, So it's a great honor to be able to work with the Afro. I'm really grateful to all of the people who have, the actual blood family, and then the work environment family that's come on board, all the people who have worked with us for so many decades, even before I was born, who are still there, just for keeping this business thriving and keeping the content fresh and relevant.
Yeah, and Nelson King Sr., who watches just about all of our streams. We always enjoy Nelson King tuning in. He says he loves this younger generation and the power moves that they are making. Keep up the great work and effort. And Paris, I'm going to go to you, because Lafayette says he likes cookies, and you just made some great cookies. Paris, what drives your passion when it comes to baking, and even wanting to put that in the pages of the Black Press?
Well, baking is such a positive thing, and it really helps me to focus on positive things and kind of block out the negative, even if it's only for an hour or so. Mm-hmm. And I wanted to share that with my column, The Bake, and so that's why I'm so passionate about baking.
Well, it sounds good to me. Lafayette, I'm going to come over to you. I benefit from it. So listen, so you're going to see a smile here. But Lafayette, how often do you find yourself, and I'm going to ask Celeste and Savannah the same question, how often do you find yourself arguing with older people that you work with about the best approach to reach new audiences?
Well, I would say in the past, it was a lot. More recently, it's been less. I think that at the Informer, a lot of our staff has sort of realized that we have to take some chances and we have to experiment with new business models and ways to make money. So with that being said, and sort of them understanding, as they take the journey to learn more about technology and learn more about, the sort of future of journalism, I believe that they realize that there's actually a lot to learn. It's not something you can grasp, in a quick info session. So, I believe that they've been, relinquishing a lot of the responsibilities that are required for change. And so that's, sort of led to us being able to move faster toward change. We have a lot of new products. Washington Informer has launched Win Daily, which is a daily email blast. We have launched Washington Informer TV, a very similar program to what you're producing. So we have many. We're looking into many ways to diversify our digital offering, and those arguments have been less and less. So I'm really appreciative of the environment that's being nurtured around digital publishing.
Yeah, what's interesting is that Lafayette, your mom at the Washington Informer, Denise, and Celeste's mom, Jan Michelle, at the Cincinnati Herald, and of course the Afro, Savannah. You guys, you have publishers who are really plugged into the community. You guys can pick up the phone and call just about anybody. So I thought that. I just wanted to mention that because what Lafayette was saying just made me think of that. Is really crucial to the success of the Black press. Celeste, same question though. How often do you find yourself arguing with the older ones that you work with about the best approach to reach new audiences?
I think it's less arguing, but I think the Cincinnati Herald as a whole is very receptive to change. So I've been working on trying to create a podcast for Cincinnati Herald, and there's a big push for social media. So I think initially that was, a little bit of pushback, but I think once everyone realizes social media is a way to reach, young people, that we have to kind of do it. So I think initially there, of course, is pushback to new ideas, but I think everyone's very receptive at the Cincinnati Herald, and especially with creating more events for young people. So there's the influencers, so they've been doing Zooms every week to 2 weeks with different, kind of conversation panels with people in Cincinnati, or there's the Bright Awards, which is an award series specifically for young people. So there's definitely a lot of emphasis on bringing in, millennials and Gen Z, to use a buzzword.
Yeah, and Derek Kenny, who's watching as well, says he's watching you guys, and he says the future is in good hands. Thanks, Derek. It certainly is. So Savannah, same question.
Yeah.
Best approach.
I think what you said is so important, that all of these publishers that we're working with are really just sharp and have so many connections. So I would echo that and just say that I haven't had to do much arguing, but I also, I've been sort of staying in my lane. Like, I have a lot to deal with the archives. There's a whole lot in that collection. And so that's been my main focus. But I will say that the publisher of the Afro and our VP of technology have been really on it. We have a huge Facebook following, got a pretty substantial Instagram following. They've been really pushing video reporting. And so, I don't have much to say about that. I don't have many arguments about it because I'm working more in the archives. Yeah.
And I'm going to stay with you for a second, Savannah, because again, working in the archives, if somebody hears that, they're thinking like, it's not a whole lot to it, but I'm sure it's a whole lot to it. Can you kind of expand on that a little bit of what you do in the archives there?
Sure. There is a whole lot to it. And there have been a lot of people before me who have really cared for this collection. So I just want to shout that out as well. It could be that we just had a bunch of stuff in boxes or bags or something like that, but we have it pretty well organized, actually. And that's because people before me got grants to organize everything down to a folder level. So when I'm talking about our archives, we have probably 1 million to 1.5 million photographs. We have audio recordings that have not yet been digitized that just say Thurgood Marshall on it, nothing else, that just say Martin Luther King speech. We don't know where it was from, when it was from. And so part of the work that I'm doing is raising money to get that digitized so that we have a sense of what's in the collection, what's in some of the collection that hasn't been digitized yet and what hasn't been cataloged yet. Other work that I'm doing is trying to figure out where I can get a big chunk of money to digitize the full photo collection. Right now, out of that 1 million to 1.5 million, we probably have about 12,000 photos digitized. So that's a very small proportion of what we actually have in the collection. In addition to that, as I mentioned, I'm also the director of Afro Charities, which is the nonprofit partner to the Afro, founded in 1963. And through that avenue, I'm working on programming that connects what's in the archives to contemporary issues. So for instance, we just put out a book called To the Front, Black Women and the Vote, which catalogs some of the history pulled from the Afro archives about Black women suffragists who were fighting to get the 19th Amendment passed and ratified. And so this year is the 100th anniversary of that amending pass, which allowed women to vote. And so the book kind of charts their history, but also connects their history to women in the 21st century working in 2020 against voter suppression, as we're in this gigantic voting year. So it's really connecting the dots between the past, which we have a great record of in the Afro archives, and the present, which is ongoing and seems to be a repeat of the past often, but we're trying to be smarter about how we strategize moving forward. So there's a lot to learn from the archives, as Celeste mentioned, learning from the past to know how to move forward.
Mm-hmm.
So that's like a
Savannah, yeah. And Savannah, I'm just going to throw this out there since you mentioned the suffrage movement, and with a big hat tip to Denise Rolock Barnes of the Washington Informer. She, last year when we were in Cincinnati, Celeste, she assigned me the task of doing a weekly feature on Black women of the suffrage movement. Well, the Society of Professional Journalism, journalists, just awarded me the award for best series for that. So I'm going to pat myself on the back, but I'm giving all the credit to Denise because it was her idea, and she's the one that said, make this happen. And as Lafayette knows, when his mom says, make it happen, we better make it happen, right, Lafayette?
That's true.
Congratulations.
We are again live.
Yeah, certainly.
Well, thank you, Celeste. Well, again, it's Denise Rolock Barnes. I give all the credit to, but we are live with the next generation of the Black press. Paris, I want to go back to you right now. We are publishing your columns, but you also had another honor as far as publishing is concerned. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Yes, for school, one of our assignments was to write a 100-word story. And then after it was done, my teacher was going to publish it to this association because they're making a book out of all of our stories. So I got my story published, and it's going to be in their book, and their book is going to be coming sometime this summer.
Look at that. So a published author as well. Isn't that something? So, so Paris, are we going to? Is there other books in your future?
Maybe. I think that would be a good experience for me to try to write new books. It would be a lot of fun too.
Yeah. Well, you see all this talent on this panel with you. Maybe you can tap into some of that talent there. Lafayette, what do you want to see the Black press do more of, or even start doing that is not being or getting done now?
So one, I would start with what we were discussing as far as the archives. I think that the Black press as a whole, archives are very valuable. You know, I don't think we are really taking advantage of of the archives like we should. I look at, certain celebrities i.e. like a Bob Marley or a Tupac or, these folks where you can go and buy their t-shirt everywhere and they're selling their likeness everywhere and the brand is associated with this and that. I really think that, for instance, my grandfather, Dr. Calvin Rollart in Washington, D.C., he's a famous name. I mean, people know, he has quotes that people know him by. A lot of people are trying to, do their own projects to hold on to his legacy. And I don't think at the Informer we've done enough to really create a brand around his legacy and the legacy of the Washington Informer. So, I would hope that, all of our newspapers could look at, ways that we can monetize and sort of the value of our archives and the value of, our position in the world in general, and just sort of just be a little bit more creative in ways that we can, maintain. Another thing I would say is just looking into the future a little bit deeper. I think I was watching an interview with Jeff Bezos, and he's the owner of the Washington Post, and he says that when he came to the Post, he wasn't a newspaper guy, and they didn't expect that from him. He was a tech guy. So they said, we don't need help with creating a newspaper. We need help with the internet. And so a lot of papers, like if you look at their, staff, you might not find like a chief technology officer or someone in charge of the tech aspects of their business, which now, might, have the potential to be, 50% of their profit. So, or more. So, and especially as a future, especially as time goes, it'll get even more important. So I would really like to see, the Black press really take technology a little bit more seriously, look into, even expanding technology and not just using what's out there, sort of, just being on the cutting edge. I really think that would be beneficial for our industry.
Yeah, and Lafayette, don't be afraid to say that your grandfather was a legend. Okay. So Dr. Rolock certainly was a legend. I never had the privilege of meeting him, but I know a whole lot about him. So I know I can say that with confidence. Whit Michelle says, good afternoon, everyone. Peace and blessings. Nicole McDaniel says, congratulations. So a lot of people are watching and chiming in. I'm going to go to Celeste with that same question I asked Lafayette. What do you want to see the Black press do more of, or even start doing, that is not being or getting done now?
Yeah, so to build on what Lafayette said, I think it's all about innovation. So whether it's innovating with technology, having a chief technology officer for our newspapers, or finding ways to build the website, build the social media brands, reach more people in the area. I also think we're at a unique position right now because there's so much focus on the Black community, especially the Black press. And so that's a good way to kind of expand beyond our, maybe geographic areas into, building more national brands or more regional presence as well. But I think it's all about innovating and focusing on technology because that's where the world seems to be growing.
Yeah, and Savannah, Lafayette mentioned archives as one, and we've already heard, the great job you're doing with that. But just expand on that, if you will, on the question of what do you want to see the Black press do more of, or even start doing, that is not being or getting done now?
Yeah, sure. One thing that comes to mind is more in-depth video that's not necessarily like in-time reporting, but that's produced video that's about particular stories, going deeper into the history through video that we can share in different places. Another issue that comes to mind is covering more LGBTQ issues. And when we talk about Black Lives Matter protests and that sort of thing, really making sure that we're including our trans brothers and sisters in that conversation as they're exposed to a lot of violence as well. And making sure that our coverage is really inclusive of those folks too. And then I think that's it for me.
Well, Savannah, let me ask you a question. I look at Twitter a lot, as I'm sure you guys look at all sorts of social media, and there's a faction of Twitter. They call themselves Black Twitter, right? Or at least a faction of Black Twitter. Now, what you just said about the LGBTQ and others, right? One person in particular, I'm not going to mention his name, but he always says that why do we make this more why do we include others when for so long Black people have been left out? Why don't we just focus on Black people and let the LGBTQ community focus on themselves and let this community focus? What do you say to that?
We're both. There's tons of Black people who are gay, bi, trans. There's tons of gay people who are Black. So it's, I wouldn't separate those two categories. And to do that is to ignore and basically act like Black gay people don't exist when they're in our families. They are us. And so it's really important that we change the thinking on that because it's really reductive.
Yeah. Paris, I'm going to come to you. Thanks, Savannah. Thank you. I'm going to come to you, Paris, with the same question about the Black press. Is there something you'd like to see the Black press do more, especially when it comes to young ones?
Well, The Black press, I think, does cover a lot. Maybe focus, well, not focus, but it would be nice to hear ways for younger people, like people my age, to kind of escape negativity. Would be nice because negativity is all around us. Violence is all around us. So it would be a nice way to escape from that and focus on positive.
All right. Well, I think we try, Paris, to do a lot of positive reporting. There is some that others, maybe like yourself, would consider negative things, but unfortunately, this world presents challenges in which you have to cover. But that is well noted, because we want to hear from someone like yourself, your age group, because that's extremely important to our publishers. So we'll make sure that they understand. And Jan Michelle Kearney is trying to check in. She's been listening, but she's trying to figure out where she can watch Celeste. So and with that,
Paris, I think what you're saying is so important, because it needs to be a balance. It's like we have so much that's coming in that's negative and that's damaging and that's violent, and we don't want that to be the only way that we see ourselves. The other thing that I think is really special about the Black press, particularly historically, and something that gets brought up in the documentary, what's it called? Soldiers with Pens or something? The documentary that's about the Black press, I can't remember.
Swords.
Yeah. But so, basically that
with swords.
Thank you. That the Black press would cover birthdays and would cover weddings, and that wouldn't get covered in other newspapers. And so for that to be a part of the coverage is super important. That Black joy is a huge part of how we survive in this country. And so that needs to be really well documented as well.
If I could add to that, I would say that at the Bridge, we're only able to publish, we print 12 pages once a month. So, with photos and, with the nice layout, we're only able to publish maybe 5 stories, max. So we really do try to have a foundation of positivity and motivation. So we're really trying to showcase that there are African Americans who are succeeding and who are, overcoming challenges and innovating. And that's really our focus versus, the daily news and those type of things. I think the magazine format, even though we are a newsprint, the magazine format allows us to have curate, what it is that we want to discuss. So I think, maybe I didn't necessarily, have that in mind when I created the idea for that. But what I would say is that my grandfather and my mother taught me that the Informer had this policy of like no bad news, which didn't mean that they didn't discuss serious topics. It just sort of meant that, they wouldn't demonize, they wouldn't be a part of the demonization of, their own people. So I think that, I've tried to keep that practice through the Bridge.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and I think in a lot of ways, if you want to see a positive story about your community, you have to turn to the Black press, because other news sources, maybe they don't care enough, maybe they don't have the same motivation. But if I want to see good things that are going on in Cincinnati in the Black community, the only place I can turn is the Cincinnati Herald and the other publications here. There aren't really a lot of other options to see something positive.
That is true. I was also hoping that one of the things that Paris would have said that she'd like to see the Black press do is give her dad a vacation, but that didn't happen. So
you got to pay her for that one.
Savannah said I have to pay her for that one. Okay. Celeste, I'm going to go back to you, Celeste, because you mentioned the fact that our publishers' history and heritage is in their print publications. After all, we are the National Newspaper Publishers Association. So how much of your work involves the print product versus online and digital assets?
I think it's a mix of both. So when articles are published, in print in the paper, they're sometimes also published online, vice versa. So getting news across both those forms, and also like publishing on Instagram every week a picture of the front page of the paper to encourage people to buy the paper and also check the Instagram. So it's definitely a mix, and I do see the print and digital media kind of working together. But Yeah, I think there is a good balance going on between the two, since they do hit different audiences, I think, a lot of the time.
Yeah. And Savannah, same question.
Can you repeat it? I'm sorry.
Oh, I'm sorry. Sure. How much of your work involves? Well, I guess we really know this, but perhaps you can talk more about it anyway. How much of your work involves the print product versus online and digital assets?
Yeah, it's a bit of a mix. For a while, I was posting on the Afro's Instagram some images from our archives as like a throwback Thursday kind of thing. Oftentimes, our editorial team will reach out for content for the physical newspaper, so we put it there as well. So it's, again, a mix. I mentioned the book that we just released. That's in both a physical and digital format. I wish I had it in hand. I might have to go run and get it in a second. But it's a really beautiful book that I think is a wonderful keepsake. So I'm invested in a physical format just because of the way that you can relate to it and the way that it creates a more intimate experience with reading, in my opinion. But I know that for a lot of people, they don't feel that way. So we really push both. So afro.com, we have news going out all the time. And if you subscribe to the physical newspaper, you'll get that once a week. So there's a mix.
Yeah. And Savannah, Denise Rolock Barnes just let me know that you and I are both wrong on that title. We were trying to figure out. It's
I thought so.
Soldiers without swords.
Thank you.
There you go.
I was like, swords, though.
Exactly. You know, I'm gonna stay on this topic about online and digital because it seems that some of our publishers had to be dragged kicking and screaming into the digital side of things. And Savannah, I'll start with you on that. Again, we want to appeal to young ones as well. Isn't that important, the digital side?
Yeah, it's incredibly important. You have to be able to access the paper no matter where you are, or the content no matter where you are. And if you think about it, everybody has their phone in their hand or in their pocket all hours of the day, pretty much. So that's your best connection to most people. The challenge, of course, is the revenue stream. And so how do you make money from the internet? And advertising rates are not the same as in print. And so how do you monetize that content, or how do you stay in business for the long run? So you have to get really creative if you're going mostly digital about how to keep the money coming in.
Yeah.
Because increased audience does not necessarily mean increased revenue. So that's a challenge that I think most people are facing in the 21st century, trying to figure out what those models look like.
Absolutely. Lafayette, really same question. A lot of some of our publishers, as I said to Savannah, had to be pretty much, dragged into the digital and online life that we now have, kicking and screaming. Talk about the importance of really developing digitally.
Yeah, I mean, you can't stress it enough. It's where we are now. You have to meet your customers where they are, your readers where they are, and that's where we are. That's where everybody is. Everybody's digital. I mean, if you look at, you can look at Nielsen. You can go to I'm sorry, what's it called? Ericsson, like any of the sort of like data centers that will tell you about the usage of where people are, getting their media. They will tell you that, majority of people are using digital. When we look at our analytics and we look at how, when we push out a article on social media where it's being observed, we see that majority of the time is actually through mobile, not even desktop. Mm-hmm. So, there are a lot of changes happening in the digital world, and it's moving very quickly. So it's very important that we, put our best foot forward to try to adapt, because, you will lose. Like there is no future of print newspapers that's done. I mean, right now, the print newspaper is a relic. It is a collector's item, and that is great. And I appreciate that. I agree with Savannah. I love the form of print. We still print the bridge. I actually am the graphic designer for the bridge too, and the layout editor. So I really take that to heart, the way that the print edition looks. But I can tell you that, if we're going to sustain and make money, that, you know, the digital forward approach is where it needs to be. We do have a website, WI Bridge DC, where we publish all of our content. It's usually a lot of the same content from the paper. It might be additional supplemental content added, so i.e. videos or a photo gallery, or, you know, a continuation of the story. There may be a comment section, you know, ways that the article can become more interactive. But even that, I mean, that's just scratching the surface. Right now, you know, companies are using virtual reality and augmented reality and, you know, all type of futuristic, you know, Star Trek-like media technology. Even I just read an article this morning about how a lot of companies who report on finances and sports are using AI to write the articles. So they don't even have writers anymore. They're just the articles are getting written by, you know, someone inputting data from the sports, you know, event. This how many points were scored. This how many, you know, blah blah blah, and an article is generated through artificial intelligence. So, you know, I would say that technology is super important. If you don't adapt, you will have to find a sponsor. You know, you got to find a foundation to take care of you guys or something like that. Otherwise, if you plan on making money from your efforts, then it needs to be digital. And there's no doubt about it.
And again, with speaking of online and digital, the virtual NNPA 2020.com is where you can sign up free for the NNPA's annual conference this year, which takes place on Wednesday, July 8th and Thursday, July 9th. Again, it's virtual NNPA 2020.com. Paris, you're the youngest of the bunch. When it comes to, on this panel, you're the youngest. When it comes to online news and news in general, do you look at the newspaper or do you go online? And if you go online, where do you go exactly? Do you use your phone, or tell us about your experience?
Well, I like to keep up with the news, and I usually do that through my phone. And I have a news app that I look at, and it kind of just has everything for the day. And I think it's really important to keep up with what's going around you and stay informed.
Yeah, absolutely. Celeste, I want to stick with the topic of digital. You've heard your peers, Lafayette and Savannah, and even Paris chime in about digital. What's your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think Lafayette had a lot of the points I was thinking. You know, print media definitely reaches a different demographic than a lot of people today. So, for example, Paris only checks the news on her phone. I think, you know, getting the news on your phone, on your computer is really how you reach people. So personally, I look at a lot of my news either on my computer or on my phone because I like that platform better. But, you know, for example, my grandmother really likes to, you know, read her print newspaper every morning or every week. So I think that's, you know, having both forms right now to kind of reach everyone. But I do see it eventually transitioning to more online, more digital.
Yeah,
it could even be, you know, like a virtual magazine or virtual newspaper.
I think if you're going to make a print product moving forward, it has to be really special, you know, so it has to be really beautifully made. It's probably going to come at a premium price. The photographs need to be like exquisite, like everything has to be perfect, really, you know, in order for it to be worth it, in my opinion, moving forward. Because people are, you know, there's the whole like Marie Kondo thing. Everybody's getting rid of stuff. Like, does this bring me joy? So it has to be something that really, you know, brings you some value.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And to that point, Savannah, Celeste, do you guys normally share ideas with your counterparts at other publications in the Black press?
If I could chime in,
Please.
Jump in.
So for instance, Patrick Washington and Dallas, we've kept in touch, you know, every so often. I would say that the folks that I meet at the conferences are the folks that I keep in touch with the most. And I would say, and also the Bridge, I've been running it for maybe 3 to 4 years now. So, you know, I've specifically been interested in cultivating that relationship since that period of time. So a lot of you may have seen me running around conferences as a child, or, you know, like not really being involved and just showing up. So, you know, it took me sort of understanding the importance of the legacy of our business for me to really understand the importance of those relationships also. And so I would hope that, going forward, we could all, develop some network where we can discuss and exchange, ideas. And I think that we could find value in creating, that organization through something like NMPA, where, we can, come through as a trade organization and attack more digital-based advertisers and organizations. So I really hope that we do develop that type of network.
Yeah.
I think that's a big value in the NMPA, especially today, to get to meet, people from other publications and learn about this network of great Black newspapers across the country.
And I would just say that I'm mostly working within the archives. And so most of the conversations that I'm having are about archival practices. And so I have been in conversation with like an archivist librarian community here in Baltimore, and I found them to be really open and receptive, because the main goal with most of those types of organizations is to share information, is to share access to scholarship. So that's been a really great community to become a part of.
Yeah. And Celeste, let me go back to you, and this really is a question for everyone else too. Should the NMPA establish a forum where more of the young people working in the Black press can share innovations?
Oh, I think that's a great idea.
Yeah.
I think it's great that we're all having this conversation today, and I think it would be great if more people could be involved or more voices at the table, so we can hear best practices for how to reach, millennials or Gen Z, or whatever. Because I think, all of us are thinking about that. So being able to share, what we're each doing and how to implement that in our own cities is a great idea.
Yeah. Savannah, Lafayette, you guys want to jump in on that?
Oh,
Yeah.
Go ahead, Savannah.
No, I was just gonna say, short answer is yes. I think power in numbers also. So if there are other millennials at legacy organizations, let's say, that are struggling to get their leadership to change ways, I think it's important to hear from young people across the country in concert, in one large group, to say, yeah, we're all feeling this way. Yeah, we all want to do this.
I think it would be great, obviously, and I think that it's important that we can learn from the experience of others and the ones before us. So having that open line of conversation would be very helpful. I know as I venture into entrepreneurship with the bridge, there's a lot of things I just don't know. I'm not an advertising executive. I'm not a digital strategist or anything like that. I'm just trying to do the best I can. So I certainly would appreciate the ability to be able to share information across the network. And I think that something that Dr. Chavis mentioned to me before that I've kept close to my heart is the fact that there's an entire world out there. I mean, it's not just the United States, it's not just DC. It's an entire world out there, and there are Black journalists all over the world that would love to connect digitally. And if we can, create a network where we all are connecting, we can certainly make waves as far as change within our community, globally. If you look at the Black Lives Matter movement, which I see somebody made a comment about, you would see that it's a global movement at this point. And I think that it's about time. And so, with together, as Savannah said, we're stronger together. So, I really think that that's something we should, it would be great to see happen.
Yeah, and Patrick Washington writes into Lafayette. He says we keep the link strong and build. We're looking forward to having Patrick Washington on this program next month, actually. So that should be a good one as well. Paris, I want to ask you, at school, what's the interest level, or among your peers, not just at school, what is the interest level in news?
I think a lot of my classmates don't really focus on the news that much. They don't really pay attention, and I think that it's important to. And I think I should really contribute to that, like kind of get their attention to focus, kind of see what's going on around them.
Do you have a
Yeah, do
school
you think?
newsletter?
No, I don't.
That would be a great place
Wow,
to
you
start
do.
if you have any teachers who are like an English teacher or something who would be willing to help with that. That might be a great place to start. And I could imagine that could also, you could potentially form a partnership with some other press organizations in your city and say, hey, we're printing this school thing. Maybe you run something once a week that's just a column from the school newspaper or something like that to get more interest through participation.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be good. So Celeste, I know that well we're in the stretch run now, and I know you have an appointment coming up as well. But I'll start with you. Do you have a question that you'd like to ask the others, Savannah or Paris or Lafayette?
I guess I'd be interested to hear what you see as the future of the Black press in the next year, especially, with all these conversations around race and Black Lives Matter and police brutality. How do you see the Black press, tackling this within the next year, for example?
So, Savannah, Lafayette, you want to respond to that?
I can chime in. I would say that maybe more than ever in my lifetime. Well, I don't know. I mean, this happens every so often. So sometimes it can be distracting or whatnot. But with that being said, what I'm saying is that the light is on us right now. The light is on the Black press. We have the opportunity to grasp audiences that we typically weren't looking toward us. Even the divisiveness of the United States has created more of a cult following for the Black press. So if we fail in this moment, then we might not have another chance. So I would say that this is our moment to shine. Companies are showering us with money and trying to do their best to make sure that the public knows that they support Black lives. So as we receive money and as more resources open up, it's really time to put our foot in the gas and get toward the goal of digitization and monetization and just being innovative.
Yeah.
I would say,
Savannah.
Yeah, I would say when we look at the archives, we'll see that the Black press often partnered with civil rights organizations to get those messages out. And so I think it would be prudent for publishers to find organizations that are doing great work around racial justice in the United States and to find ways to creatively partner there. In the same way that we have in the past. For the Afro, for instance, had an amazing relationship with the NAACP. I spoke earlier about some of the digital recordings that we have that just say Thurgood Marshall on it. So it's like there's an intimacy there in those relationships that were really beneficial at that time. Additionally, I think with the money that's coming in now that could be seen as sort of like guilt money in a way, it's like people, Lafayette mentioned that these people who are giving money want their followers to know they support Black people. I think in our position, we also can put a little bit of pressure on some of those folks to say, okay, you donated this one time. How about a year's plan for you're going to have an ad running every month or something, like how about you sustain this level of support over 5 years? Let's talk about a deep investment in Black institutions as opposed to a one-time, one and done, Black Lives Matter and then they're gone. Mm-hmm. So that might be a way that the Black press can continue with this additional attention moving forward.
Yeah, and one of the questions when we have the publishers on that we've been posing to the publishers, and I've been asked to pose this to you guys, and we can start with Celeste. Black men, Black women, Black children we see are being killed weekly in the streets, right? What more can the Black press do to help save Black lives?
I think that's a really good question. Going back to what we were talking earlier about positivity. So I think especially seeing, images and stories about brutal violence, also realizing that these are people. So having the Black press help kind of humanize the victims, especially, and showing that, these people had a lot to offer, and it's really sad how they left us early. So I think focusing on the positivity and trying to, but that's been as a, just one way Black press can help in these times.
Yeah, it's interesting. You, Celeste, you mentioned, you said humanize the victims, and I recall I used to work for a newspaper in Pennsylvania, and it was during the Iraq War, and we would constantly have soldiers come back dead, right? And I was assigned to always write those stories, and so I'd have to go and knock on the door of the family, which is one of the hardest things a journalist can do, anyone can do, right? To try and get an interview with a family member, and you just lost your son or your daughter. And one of the first things I tell them is that's exactly what we want to do, is humanize that person, because all you see is numbers. This soldier just died, that soldier just died. You see numbers. So I think what you just said is really important. Savannah, I didn't mean to take away from your commentary on that matter, but go ahead, please.
Oh, no, you're good. I didn't have anything yet. I was still coming up with an idea for what to say.
So we'll go to Lafayette then. How about that?
All right. Repeat the question one more time. I'm listening.
Sure. So what more can the Black press do to help save Black lives?
Okay. Well, I mean, I think there's a lot of things we could do. But I think, I think the biggest thing is just continue to, be a forum for conversation, for solutions for Black people. So a lot of the times I think, one thing I notice now is that there's a lack of leadership, I think, in the Black community. This is my personal opinion. I'm not an expert on the topic, so please don't, state this as the opinion of the Washington Informer newspaper, or the Bridge. But my personal opinion is that there's a lack of, clear, direction for the Black community in America. And I think that, part of that is because we have a lot of people that I'm familiar with think that there's going to be somebody that's going to appear, like a Jesus, a savior, that's going to appear and take us out of the issues that we're dealing with. But I think that, we need to look into ourselves, and each individual person should look into themselves and decide what they can do personally to make us as a people better, and I think that should come to conversation. So as long as we, have formats like this TV show, this show that you're putting together, and shows that the Washington Informer and the Bridge intend to put together, I think we're moving in the right direction. It's all about just having positive conversation and trying to find solutions for our community.
I want to respond to that too.
Go ahead.
Because you said that maybe there's a lack of leadership or direction, and something that Patrisse Cullors says, who's one of the founders of Black Lives Matter, is that the movement is a leaderful movement. And so, and that's strategic. And when we look at history, we see that when we had a single leader, those people got assassinated. And so in order to maintain, the strategy has been to have several leaders, but you can look to certain organizations that have specific platforms. For instance, the Movement for Black Lives, they have a specific platform about what should happen next. I think part of the issue, and that call has primarily been to defund police. And so it's a question of whether your politics align with that or not, and if that's something that you're willing to promote or not. And if not, maybe taking a step back and considering why not, and reporting on that. So reporting on, well, what does that actually mean? Like, what would happen if we were to do that? So that's a big call that we've seen, and we report the facts of, this was painted at Black Lives Matter Square Plaza, or this was painted in front of Baltimore City Hall. But what does it mean behind that if we were to actually move forward with that proposal? There was something else I wanted to say, is that part of the reason why I think there's confusion about how to move forward or what the platform is because there are just so many things wrong with the way that the country is being run, that it's hard to know what's the primary goal. But I would say that organizations like Black Youth Project 100, Black Lives Matter, those organizations are kind of leading the charge about what kind of issues we should be looking at. So we can keep the pressure on. We can keep talking about these issues even once the hashtags stop trending. For instance, Breonna Taylor's name is no longer trending, but her killers have not been arrested yet. So we can continue to talk about that. It's not going to bring her back. It's not going to save Black lives necessarily, but it will show these police departments that we care.
So in our closing thoughts, Lafayette, I'll start with Celeste on closing thoughts, Celeste.
Yeah, well, thank you everyone for having this discussion. I think we definitely hit a lot of important issues on what's going on and the Black community, specifically with young people in the Black press. So thank you for engaging in this discussion. I think it's really empowering to see so many people willing to talk about where the Black press can improve.
Yeah, absolutely. Lafayette?
Yeah, I certainly agree with Celeste. Just very happy to be a part of this conversation, very motivated by this conversation. Good to see everyone's faces and, know that, I'm not in it alone and that there are other people, that are dealing with the things that I'm dealing with. So, I think the future of the Black press is bright, as a lot of the commenters have said. And I look forward to continue this conversation.
And Savannah.
Yep, great to meet everybody. Thank you so much for including me in this conversation. And I look forward to learning more about what everybody's working on.
And Paris Brown, your closing thought.
I think it was nice to hear everybody's different perspective on different topics and where they're like indifferent. And this was very nice. And I'm glad that I got to be a part of it.
Absolutely. And remember, somebody said, Savannah, go ahead.
I forgot to tell you where you could actually get the book that we produced. So the book is called To the Front, Black Women in the Vote, and you can get it at www.tothefront.us. tothefront.us.
One more time.
www.tothefront.us. And that's the book that celebrates 100 years of women's suffrage from a Black perspective.
Great. And remember too, and this is for each of you on the panel, your friends, your social media, and those watching, sign up for and register for the NNPA's 80th anniversary conference, virtualnnpa2020.com. It's totally free. So please register. Everybody's welcome. It's going to be some great stuff. Some plans are in the works for even some real good fireworks. And that, I'm using that as a pun, but sign up, please. But thank you. Tonight, we're going to continue our music series, our Black Music Appreciation Month series with Ziggy Marley at 7 p.m. Eastern. So tune in as we talk to Ziggy Marley. And on tomorrow, actually, we have an interesting conversation with a notable African-American Republican, Paris Leonard. That's at 1 o'clock tomorrow. And then Friday, we have the president of the NAACP, Derek Johnson, joining us at 10:30 a.m. That's 10:30 a.m., Derek Johnson. And then Friday night, just to finish off the week, sports has always been that great healer when there's been social and other unrest in America. Well, we're going to talk to one of the greatest legends to ever step inside the boxing ring. At 7 p.m., join us for a great conversation with Sugar Ray Leonard. So we will see you then. Join us. And again, virtualnnpa2020.com. Thank you. Be safe. And thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.